The Ballad of Jed and the Extraordinary Transformation. This is the story of a man named Jed, a humble and poor mountaineer who struggled every day to keep his family fed. He lived a simple life in the hills until one fateful day changed everything. While he was out hunting for food, he fired his rifle, and from the ground came a bubbling crude. It was oil, often called black gold or Texas tea. Before anyone could blink, old Jed had become a millionaire. His kinfolk were amazed and told him that he must move away from the mountains. They insisted that California was the place he ought to be. So, they loaded up their truck and moved to the famous Beverly Hills, a land filled with swimming pools and movie stars. They became known as the Beverly Hillbillies. A morning in Beverly Hills. One sunny morning, Jed looked at his dogs and remarked how pretty they looked. His daughter, Ellie Mae, was standing nearby, and he thanked a man named Paul for his help. Jed noticed Ellie Mae was in high spirits and guessed that Mark Templeton must be coming over to see her. Ellie Mae confirmed this with a bright smile. She explained that Mark was fetching her a scuba suit because he was going to teach her how to be a frog woman. Jed observed that the two of them seemed to be hitting it off quite well, and Ellie Mae admitted she liked Mark a whole lot. Her only regret was that Granny did not seem to like him. Jed tried to reassure her, saying that Granny liked him well enough, but simply did not understand his profession. Granny had never heard of a Navy frogman before. She constantly told him to stay out of the water because, like many older folks who never learned to swim, she was terrified of it. Jed believed she would eventually stop worrying. Meanwhile, Miss Jane Hathaway was driving Granny home. Granny thanked her for the ride and for sending her to see Dr. Klingler. Miss Jane spoke highly of the doctor, calling him a fine psychiatrist who could help Granny with her bad dreams. Granny, however, insisted it was more than just bad dreams. She was deeply concerned that Mark Templeton would not stay out of the water. In her mind, every time he dunked himself, he literally turned into a frog. She wondered why he could not have joined the army instead, though she worried he might have gone underground and turned into a gopher man. Miss Jane urged her not to worry and to see the doctor again if the nightmares continued. The mystery of the frog. As Granny arrived home, she found herself alone with what she believed was Mark in the form of a frog. She spoke to the creature, pleading with it to stay out of the cement pond. She felt too old for such foolishness. When she saw Ellie Mae, she asked if the girl had missed Mark. Granny promised Ellie Mae that she could see Mark tall, handsome, and in his uniform again if she would just take him out of his cage and kiss him. Ellie Mae felt silly about the idea, but Granny insisted, even offering to look away while it happened. Ellie Mae took the cage outside and apologized to the frog for Granny hauling him around. She told the frog he could hop down to the cement pond for a swim. Just then, the real Mark Templeton appeared, carrying scuba gear. He greeted Ellie Mae and asked about the frog in the cage. Ellie Mae explained it was Granny's pet frog, whom she had named Mark. Mark Templeton was unsure if he should be flattered. Ellie Mae mentioned that Granny wanted her to kiss the frog, hoping he would turn into a prince. Mark jokingly replied that he did not need the competition. Granny's growing concern. When Granny saw Mark Templeton standing there in human form, she hailed it as a miracle. She thanked Ellie Mae for following her instructions. Mark announced he was going to put on his swimming suit to meet Ellie Mae at the cement pond. This news sent Granny into a panic. She begged them not to go near the water. Mark tried to explain there was no danger, but Granny was convinced that his brain shrank along with his body whenever he became a frog. She even claimed to have pulled him out of the water and taken him to a doctor previously, though Mark had no memory of such an event. The situation escalated when Granny jumped onto Mark's back to stop him from going to the pond. Jed walked in and found this chaotic scene. He ordered Granny to get down and stop riding the boy like a horse. Granny refused to budge until Mark promised to stay out of the water. Jethro entered and, seeing the commotion, offered to help by letting Ellie Mae jump on his back for a joust. Jed told Jethro to take Granny to her room. Despite her protests and calling Jethro a big lughead, he carried her upstairs as ordered. The nightmare wedding. In a feverish dream, Granny imagined a wedding taking place. Ellie Mae was set to marry Mark Templeton, and Judge Marshall was there to perform the ceremony. Granny tried to stop it, shouting that the groom was a frogman who turned into a frog when wet. In the dream, Jethro appeared as the best man but informed everyone the groom was running late because he wanted to take a shower. Granny screamed for them to stop him, but it was too late. Jed was there, and Granny pleaded with him to look at the groom. The judge proceeded with the ceremony, asking who gave the woman to be married to this frog. Jed answered that he did. The judge asked the vows, and despite Granny's cries to say no, Ellie Mae said, "I do." The judge pronounced them frog and wife. Granny watched in horror as Ellie Mae kissed the frog, hoping it would turn back into a man, but the dream ended in a chorus of no and cries for help, seeking a medical solution. Granny woke up and realized it was all a dream. She was relieved that the wedding had not actually happened. She told Jed that he could not let the courtship continue, or they would soon hear the pitter-patter of little wet feet. Jed tried to calm her down, offering her a tranquilizer and telling her to rest. Out by the pond, Mark gave Ellie Mae a new scuba suit. He explained that while the flippers were hard to walk in on land, they would feel great in the water. Granny spotted them and yelled for them to get their feet out of the water. Jed pulled her away, telling her it was none of her concern. Meanwhile, Mr. Drysdale, the banker, was talking to Hathaway. He realized that if Mark Templeton married Ellie Mae, he would be part of a family worth $40 million. Mr. Drysdale, who previously disliked Mark, suddenly decided he loved the boy like a son and needed to get on his good side. He even dressed in Navy fatigues and pretended to have a shared history of naval combat, claiming he had seen action in the Philippines and suffered a shark bite. The final attempt at a cure. Granny remained inconsolable. Jed had Jethro lock her in her room for her own safety. Jethro tried to cheer her up by reading from a book by Jim Owen, but Granny wanted to hear nothing about fish or frogs. Jethro then decided to find the pet frogs to give Granny some company. He found 2 frogs by the pond and brought them to her. When Granny saw the 2 frogs, she was convinced they were Mark and Ellie Mae, who had both turned into amphibians. She decided the only person who could help was Dr. Klingler. Granny took the 2 frogs to the doctor's office. She introduced them as Mark Templeton and Ellie Mae. Dr. Klingler, trying to be professional, listened as Granny explained that Ellie Mae was a decent, church-going girl who sang in the choir. Granny demanded that the doctor turn the 2 frogs back into a handsome lieutenant and a beautiful blonde girl. She left the frogs there, telling the doctor to have Mississippi Jane drive them home once the transformation was complete. A peaceful resolution. Back at the mansion, Jed was surprised to find Granny's bedsheets hanging out the window. Jethro explained she had spilled water and was drying them. Jed sent Jethro to find Granny. Miss Jane arrived at the house with 2 frogs in a cage. Ellie Mae and Mark were there, perfectly human and happy. Granny saw them and was overjoyed, believing the doctor had performed another miracle. She thanked Miss Jane and Dr. Klingler. Feeling exhausted but satisfied, Granny prepared to lie down for a rest. However, before she went, she asked the young couple to promise they would never go near the water again. Mark informed her that he was actually giving Ellie Mae another frogwoman lesson the very next morning. Granny's eyes widened. Before anyone could stop her, she jumped on Mark's back once more. Jed shouted for her to get off, as the family continued their lively and eccentric life in Beverly Hills, proving that while you can move the family out of the mountains, you can never truly take the mountains out of the family.